Good day once again, everyone, and I want to use this opportunity to welcome you to Mathematics Solution Center. Today, we are going to be looking at a topic that says perfect square and completing the square method. What's the relationship between perfect square and completing the square method? I just want to tell you that if you don't know what perfect square is all about, you cannot solve problem using completing the square method. In this tutorial, we are going to look at what perfect square is all about and how to factorize expressions that are in what perfect square, and at the same time we are going to solve examples using completing the square method while we are taking the steps that are necessary to solve a quadratic equation using completing the square method. But before we continue, I want to remind you, if you have not subscribed to this YouTube channel, kindly click the subscription button now. Thanks. Solution. We start from a perfect square. What is a perfect square? If I can find the square root of a number, take for instance 4, then it gives me a number without any remainder. Therefore, 4 is a perfect square. Most especially if I have a square root of n raised to power 2. This is a perfect square because my answer is going to be n. Let's take a look at an algebraic expression that is a perfect square. If I have square root of x minus a squared, the answer I'm going to get is x minus a. Therefore, this is a perfect square. So any expression that is squared is a perfect square. This expression is also a perfect square. To identify perfect square like this, it becomes so easier. I can even give more example. Let's say I have x plus 3 raised to power 2 is a perfect square. What of if I should expand this expression? X squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. It becomes somehow hard for you to identify that what x squared minus 4x plus 4 is a perfect square. In case, let's take for instance, if I have x squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. How will you know that this expression is a perfect square? And how will you know maybe this first one is also a perfect square or not? Now, let's take a look at something. There's always a relationship between the middle term and the constant term if the expression is a perfect square. Okay, what is this relationship? Let's evaluate half of 6 and then square it and see what we are going to get. Half of 6 is actually what? 3 square. And the answer is 9. Let's do the same thing to 4. Half of 4 squared, and my answer is going to be what? 2 raised to power 2, which is equal to 4. Therefore, with this, we can what? Know that an expression is a perfect square. Anytime we have square of the half of coefficient of x equals to the what? To the constant term, then we have a perfect square, but on one condition. And the condition is that what? The coefficient of x squared must be what? 1. Coefficient of x squared must be 1. That is the condition. Take note of that. Now that we've known how to identify a perfect square, how do you identify a perfect square? Just evaluate half of the coefficient of what? X, and then square it. If this is equal to your constant term, provided that your what? Your coefficient of x squared is 1. Therefore, this expression is what? Is a perfect square. Take note of that. Another way of evaluating or knowing maybe an expression is a perfect square is by what? Using this expression. B squared is equal to 4ac. If you should evaluate this and the answers are equal, then what? It is a perfect square. Let's take this and one of these examples we use there. X squared plus 6x plus 9. Let's try and evaluate it with this. X squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. Is this a perfect square? What is my B? Definitely 6 is my B. 6 squared is equal to 4 times 1 times 9. My 6 is what? 36 and is equal to 4 times 9, which is also 36. Therefore, the expression is a perfect square. So we've learned two ways of what? Identify an expression as a perfect square today. And then the two ways are what? This method. And the second method is what? Is this. But this one, make sure that the coefficient of x squared is what? 1. Now we are going down to what? Factorization of perfect square. Let's factorize this expression. X squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. How do we factorize this expression? That is the question. How do we factorize it? I will just say, I know we have the normal way of factorization, but factorization of perfect square has a kind of a a special way of factorization which makes it what more simpler and more easier and faster to what to factorize compared to every other form of what quadratic expressions. So I have x squared plus 6x plus, I will express this 9 to be what? Square of a number, which is going to be what? 3 square. Provided I can express that, then the factorization of this expression is going to be what? X, I will pick this sign here before 6, plus, and then I will pick 3, plus 3 squared is equal to 0. I have factorized this expression. From this, you can see that a perfect square is also what? A type of a quadratic expression that will have what? Just a single answer that appears what? Twice. So that is also a perfect square. So we have factorized this. Therefore, the factorization of that is actually x plus 3. And then what? X plus 3 is equal to 0. Take note of that. So this is what? Factorization of perfect square. We have actually factorized it. This is how to factorize a perfect square. As simple as that. Take for instance, if I have what? X squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. This is the same thing as x squared minus 4x plus 2 square is equal to 0. Provided it is like this and it is also a perfect square, I will just pick x, pick the sign next to x squared minus, and then I will pick these 2, then squared is equal to 0. Then I have factorized this. That means what? X minus 2 is equal to what? 0. You can see that it's a quadratic equation that we have what? One value to be what? X is equal to 2 twice. So any expression like that is a perfect square. So I believe we have learned how to what? Factorize a perfect square. Take for instance, if I have m squared plus 5m, what must be added to this expression to make it a perfect square? Very simple. Number one thing I will make sure is that what? The coefficient of m squared is what? 1. Provided the coefficient of m squared is 1, then I'm going to add what? The square of the what? Half of the coefficient of what? M. This is what I'm going to add. As simple as that. And then the expression becomes what? Perfect square. Therefore, is equal to what? 5 over 2 everything squared. This is now equal to what? 25 over 4. This is what I'm going to add to the expression. M squared plus 5m plus 25 over 4 is equal to 0. Now this expression is a perfect square. And if I want to factorize it, I will just pick my m because the coefficient of m is 1. Always ensure that. Pick your m, then the next sign to m squared. The next sign to m squared is what? Plus, and then pick what? The square root of your constant term, that is what? 5 over 2 square. If I should expand this, it will give me this expression here. As simple as that. Now let's go to completing the square method. So completing the square method and the quadratic equation. Let's see how it goes. We are going to pick a quadratic question and solve it with completing the square method. As we are going to be listing the what steps that are necessary to be followed while solving problem with what? Completing the square method. Number one is that, okay, take for instance, if I have 2t squared is equal to 4t plus 9. Then I have to rearrange this expression. 2t squared minus 4t minus 9. Minus 9 is equal to 0. Number one step is what? Make sure the coefficient of x squared is 1. But I don't have x squared here. I have t squared. Make sure the coefficient of t squared is 1. I will divide through by 2. T squared minus 2t minus 9 over 2 is equal to 0. Number two step is that what? Take the constant term to the other side. No matter what is there, take it to the other side. This is the constant term we are talking about. So I'm going to have t squared minus 2t is equal to 9 over 2. Step number 3, add to both sides the square of the half of the coefficient of x. What is half of the coefficient of x? 1 over 2 times the coefficient of x is 2. Ignore the minus sign, any sign that is there, even though it is there because we are still going to square it, then it will disappear. So, into bracket squared. So, half of the coefficient of t squared. This is what we are going to add to both sides. And what is this going to give us? 2 will cancel 2 to give us 1. Then 1 squared is what we are adding to both sides. So we have t squared minus 2t plus 1 squared is equal to 9 over 2 plus 1 squared. Now, provided you take this step number 3, provided you add the square of the half of the coefficient of t to a truncated expression like this, all you have done is that you have converted the expression to a perfect square, and then you factorize it the simplest way you can factorize what? A perfect square expression. That is just it. It makes the work become so easier because you can easily factorize what? A perfect square using the method of factorization of perfect square. Therefore, this is already a perfect square. Then let's factorize it. I'm going to just take what? T, then the sign next to t squared minus then 1 squared is equal to, then I will work on the right hand side. 2 is my LCM. 2 goes into 1. 1 times 9. 9. Then plus 1 goes into 2. 2 times 1 because 1 square is actually 1. 2 times 1. 2. Therefore, I have t minus 1 squared is equal to 11 over 2. T minus 1 squared is equal to what? 5.5. Find the square root of both sides. I have t minus 1 is equal to plus or minus. Anytime you find the square root of both sides, please add your plus or minus. 5.5. Then t is equal to 1 plus or minus square root of 5.5. 1 plus or minus 2.35 to 2 decimal places. Therefore, I have t is equal to 1 plus 2.35 therefore t is equal to 3.35 or t is equal to 1 minus 2.35, and my answer is going to be what? Minus 1.35. These are the two values of what? T. We have solved this expression, this quadratic expression, using completing the square method. In case you have any question, please kindly drop it in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like the video, share the video, and at the same time put on the notification button so that you will be notified anytime we upload a new video. Thanks, and remain blessed.